back in the cab, I have a few things to finish up, finish wire looming the rest of my wires. I'm going through my sound deadening now. I have most of it in place. I use Rattle Trap by Fat Mat. You can get a bulk pack for a pretty reasonable price. But what I wanted to show were a couple tricks that I use when laying down the sound deadening. I've been putting sound deadening in cars since Dynamat first released it, right? So I always had ways of making it quicker, making it cleaner. Some of the things that I don't like are overlaps, you know, or if your graphics are too far out of place. Something you'll never see, but as I'm putting it down, I try to want to do it right the first time, right? If someone pulls my carpet out, changes carpet later on, I want it to look good. And as you'll see, there's a couple points I wanted to make here. Now I may have about a ½ inch overlap on any seam. However, it's not bulky. It's not messy. You can see my line here, and you can see my line across the top. The way you achieve that, and the way you achieve it throughout, you can even, I'm not so much worried about my graphics being completely turned, but you can be, and make sure that everything lines up as it should, right? So if you looked at this, your spacing, you know, is not 2.5 inches apart like it is here, but you could plan and you can make that if that's exactly what you wanted. So the first thing for me is making a pattern, right? That starts with anything that I do through upholstery, through anything else. I like to make a pattern. That way it's cleaner in the end, right? The easiest thing to make a pattern with is, you know, 2-inch painter's tape. I use this from Harbor Freight, and I buy it by the case. It's cheap. It's like a couple bucks a piece. I use this when I'm, you know, when I show upholstery stuff later on. You'll see that all my patterns I make from a tape or a clear acetate, something of that nature. But I always keep a bunch of this stuff around. Now I already know that I'm going to stop 20 inches into this because we still have some work to do here in the back. That's why it's undone. These old tank mounts have to come out, and then we're also going to have to make a tunnel to go to the rear of the truck for the drive shaft, because the truck will lay out on the frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and start my template. It's cool if you go over. It's not a huge deal, right? The thing is, you may want to get it a couple different directions so it holds pretty well in the end. And the achievement is, I just want it to look like the hump, and I want to stop where it stops. I want it to be clean, cut precise, not having any issues. Now, I did wash this training tunnel off here a little bit ago, but you know, it's got like 60 years of dirt on it. I'm just going to overlap. I also have a Sharpie with me and an Olfa knife, so that's what I use to cut out all my templates. So obviously went one way, but we need to go back and forth a couple different directions. That way the template's a little more solid when you lift it up from the floor. Otherwise it could move, right? But for the most part, you can see how quick that was just to get my basic shape. And when you're looking at complex corners and everything, from like this seat riser dropping down into the rocker, it allows you to figure out what that shape's going to be in the end, so it comes together for your project better. I'm probably good. Now the Sharpie, right? I'm going to go ahead and make my lines where I was going to be at. This starts to rip apart, just kind of lay it back and add more tape. I could probably sit here for another few minutes making it, you know, perfect, and keep adding tape and it come off. But you can see our pieces off, and we have our lines drawn. Now we'll take it to the table. So back to the table. I have my template. I have the sound deadening that I'm going to use. I have a ruler, I have my Olfa knife, and I have a heat gun, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes. Kind of to the end of my roll, so my stuff's really looking kind of wavy, and all that'll come out for the technique that I use. And I know that it's crazy spending like 40 minutes on one piece and going over sound deadening, but here's the thing: if you're putting a high-end interior into a street rod muscle car, anything of that nature, and your foundation is the sound deadening, and then it just looks like trash when you pull out the carpet, then in the end it says something about your work, right? So the thing is, take a little extra precaution now. You know, line up the graphics, make it visually appealing, make the overlaps where they're tight, where they're not, you know, 3-4 inches and you're trying to hide it all with jute or carpet or whatever, right? So here's my piece. Here's my template. I did swing by the my scissors and I trimmed out the edges. It's a pretty simple piece. I will show you that I had some overlap. I was just running the tape, but I know that it's a sharp line, so all I'm going to do is take it right to the top and it'll allow me to have another sharp line right there. There is some taper, and I'll just cut it off here in the end. You can either draw out onto the rattle trap with a Sharpie and then trim it all if you like. I don't necessarily do that. I'm going to cut off some of this excess off the end. So I use an Olfa knife, and much like what I used 20 years ago, tinning windows, very sharp. I have a box of 50 or 100 blades, and as soon as it gets dull, I just go on to the next one. It's a great tool. Little expense. I think the blades are probably, 20, 30 bucks for 50 of them, but it's well worth the money around the shop. So I was just that thin blade. I just cut through a layer of foil and sound deadening. So I'm just using the ruler to kind of get my edges. I don't know where I was. Again, you could probably trace it over to with a Sharpie and then cut it out. Scissors may not work on this very well unless you have a pretty nice pair of scissors that you want to run. So I just use some kind of razor blade. Also, the pattern kind of gives you a guide. You don't have to go trace it a second time. I'm just going around and knocking these corners off. Again, this one's pretty simple. So if you get around like a seat riser, like I have in there, there may be, when you're working your pattern, there may be a hard edge that you have to cut. And then it kind of folds out, right? As your pattern or whatever cuts you need to make to lay it flat to transfer to this. And then think of it like a cardboard box laying out, right? Not all points attach. But if you think of it like that, and you can split it apart to your largest single piece that still attaches, that can kind of fold back over a seat riser or a gas tank mount or something like that, whatever you want, right? There's these mounts behind the seat that you could do. All right, so we're pretty much finished to what we want to do with the tape. That's our pattern. Our pattern's transferred. This one's a pretty simple pattern. You get as complex as you want. Still kind of wavy. There are rollers to roll this in. I probably will as a final step, but I wanted to show this. I typically wear a mask, or I typically run outside and do it, and I'll do it with a torch or my heat gun. So here's the thing, this stuff stays around the place. Sticky, kind of asphalt base, right? It smells like hot tar. But I like to heat it up. So I'll take a heat gun and I'll go over it and I'll make this thing a little warm, probably like 800 or 900 degrees. And it'll start changing colors on the back when you're hitting it. And it'll go from you know, kind of a semi-satin color to slick black. Again, you probably shouldn't be breathing this stuff. It doesn't take a lot. You get too hot, you know, just melt right to your hand. That's probably not good. Again, that's like all it takes. That's probably like 800 degrees, and it is sticky now. It smells like hot garbage, but it's sticky, and it'll go straight on, and you hit it with a roller, and all these little bumps will come straight out. So quick shot in goal. You can see it makes it a little tighter. You can control your edges if you want a 1/2 inch overlap or not. There is a slit right here, and it allows for the back half of this panel to drop down. But other than that, that's a clean way to pattern out. And then if you're wanting to you know, adjust all your graphics, right? See, I'm out of line from here to here, but all of that is setting up your pattern and then laying out your pattern onto the piece itself, and you'll know exactly where to cut so you can have your final product as you want it. Thanks for watching.